Hello there. Welcome to Clear Money Talk. I'm Tim Clairmont. This is a place where we turn complex financial topics into clear, practical insights.
And I'm Tyler Andrews. Welcome to the show. We got another fun one for all you listeners today. Our topic is the American dream still financially attainable?
Ooh, okay, that's going to be fun.
Yeah, so I'm going to read that back. Is the American dream still financially attainable? Okay. So what is the American dream? It's this virtuous idea, really, is what it is, that has existed for a long time here in the United States of if you do the right things for long enough, certain things should become fruitful for you, whether that is the American dream of owning a home or having that stable career and job that gives you that title that you want, gives you the gold watch, or putting your children through education, or buying that sports car. There's all these different things that people daydream about, really, to satisfy their version of the American dream. But there are some common denominators as far as what makes the American dream and what doesn't. We'll talk through those things today, but really I want to hit on, is it still financially attainable? I think a lot of people would agree that now more than ever, things just seem less and less attainable. All the things that used to be attainable for maybe your parents or your grandparents, or you hear stories or you see it online, everyone else was able to do it, but now it just seems like those things are further out of reach than ever. And I thought this was a very timely thing for us to talk about today.
Yeah, I love this topic. It's got me thinking. My brain's spinning on a bunch of different things here. And I mean, I think the first place you got to start with is the evolution of the American dream. I mean, the reality is the American dream of our parents and grandparents was one thing, and the American dream today is probably something different. And and how you define the American dream will ultimately determine the answer to the question. If the American dream is you own your own house, you have your own sports car, you have maybe the gold watch, the retirement account, you're able to retire at 60 to 65 as long as you work hard enough. I actually think that that's pretty accomplishable for the majority of Americans if they work hard. I would argue. I think there's certainly a minimum capability that's necessary. I mean, there's certainly people who are just, no matter how hard they work, are going to struggle. I don't think you can achieve the American dream on minimum wage, and not that American dream. But if you redefine the American dream nowadays, and I look at people my kids' age, or some of the younger employees that we have, or even some of the teenagers that are out there now, where the American dream might be, I actually am quite happy living with my parents, or living in an apartment complex with 4 friends, and if we don't need to have cars because we can just Uber, and if I can ultimately live on minimum wage and just have enough food that I can do whatever the heck I want to do with my free time, that might be their version of the American dream, and that might be very accomplishable on minimum wage. So I think you need to question, what does the American dream mean to you? And then based on that answer, we could theoretically answer the question. But one thing comes to mind.
Please.
In my first book, Passionate Ambivalence, I shared an equation, and I've come to teach the equation at various advisory meetings to other financial advisors around the world. But the equation is about earnings potential, and I think this directly relates to the American dream. If you want to earn more money, you want to make more money so that you can use that money to achieve the American dream, whatever that dream is for you, it's a function of what you're willing to do that other people won't do, added together with what you're capable of doing that other people can't do, multiplied by society's demand for that thing. So if society's, like, for example, let's say that you're capable of standing on your head for 10 hours a day. Like, I can't do that, but there's probably somebody in the world that might be able to do something like that, something kind of crazy like that, right? Well, you might be the only person in the world that's capable of doing that, and you might be willing to do it all frickin' day long. But society doesn't care. You can't multiply that by 0 and expect to have a massive paycheck nowadays. Maybe there are enough people that would watch you on the internet, and maybe you actually could get compensated for doing something crazy like that. I mean, that's where society's demand come into play. On the other hand, if society's demand is very high and the supply of people capable and willing of doing that task is very low, there's likely a high opportunity for earning a lot more money. And I think that you can use that as a filter to determine what is it that you're choosing to do as your profession, as your occupation, as your energy that you're putting into the world, that the world is then compensating you for with a paycheck. And if you've chosen something that society has a high demand for, and you're particularly talented or particularly willing, or both, to do that thing, then you're likely to have a greater earnings potential, thus reaching the American dream, at a higher level, objectively.
I love the analogy and the picture in my head of someone standing on their head for 10 hours a day. That seems very painful.
It does. It sounds horrible.
I
to me,
appreciate
but
you sharing all those thoughts. I think
Yeah.
they're all things for sure that we will hit on throughout this episode. And we'll unpack this all in more detail as we go on. But I think the gist of what I found this topic to be important is, the American dream used to feel like somewhat of a standard roadmap. And today, more than ever, it feels like a moving target for a lot of people. So we'll kind of unpack that, like I mentioned, and go through the different scenarios. And maybe we start out why it feels harder now, Tim. I think that's an important place to field. And, a listener might be saying, the American dream seems, pretty standard from what it used to be. Tim and Tyler, what are you guys talking about? So maybe we can unpack that here a little bit. And I think the biggest thing is that major milestones now cost more. Inherently, there's no if, and, or buts away around it, right? You go talk to your grandparents or your parents and you ask them how much they paid for their first house, it's likely going to give you somewhat of a heart attack because you're going to be like, you paid 50 grand for that house?
$5,000. I mean,
$5 grand?
You talk to grandparents, you can get to like $5,000. It's crazy.
Yeah. Shoot, they used to pretty much give houses away for free back in the day.
Well, it still felt painful. You still $5,000 was a lot back then. But anyway,
true.
I hear you.
And what was those magazines? You used to be able to choose a house for the magazine, and they would show up and build it for you. It was like
the Sears.
The Sears.
Stuff. Yeah. I think that's what it was. That's funny.
Very different reality for people nowadays. And unpacking that from a housing standpoint, education, healthcare, childcare, everyday living necessities is putting extra pressure on households. And if you combat that with wages and what wages have done over the same time period, wages, it's not a secret, haven't kept up with inflation and the cost of goods over time. When you're saying a house used to cost $5,000 and now that same house costs $500,000, maybe even $1 million, wages haven't increased linearly with that. And that's a huge reason why a lot of people feel behind and feel that those milestones that used to be table stakes for back in the day are now feel either that much more difficult to attain or impossible for a lot of people.
Yeah. I think the American dream, going back to what it is, the house has clearly always been a part of that American dream, and housing is an example of something that has had a real increase in cost. One of the great examples that kind of comes to mind showing that things actually increase significantly in cost. I actually wrote my thesis on the irreconcilability of rising costs with rising tuition in college. And the cost of school expenses, higher education expenses, like college education, have increased not at just a nominal inflationary rate, but at a real inflationary rate. Like the actual cost is greater. Great example of this is you look at people currently in their early 70s. They were, like my parents, they were able to work their way through college. They could actually work, take their wages earned in a relatively close to minimum wage job, use that to cover their costs of school and be out of school with no debt. Then you go to people in my generation, Gen X, I'm just turning 50 here in a couple of weeks, and you look at the situation. I had to borrow in order to get my way through school. It was expensive at Whitman College. I couldn't have just worked my way through, but I was able to work really hard after the first couple of years, enough to pay off all of the debt that I had to take on in order to get my college paid for. So I was able to get that done within a few years. You move on to people that are in their early 30s, like Tyler, or in their early 20s, and it's unlikely that if you're going to take a big loan to pay for college education expenses like that, that you're going to have enough income in 2 or 3 years, no matter how hard you work, to pay that off. You're likely to have to pay that off over a much longer period of time. So the actual cost, the real cost of education has risen over those years, more than wages have. And the same thing has happened, I would argue, with housing. We have a limited supply of housing, and the real cost of housing is greater. That being said, if you change the focus of the American dream, there are many things that are far cheaper today than they ever were in the past. If you look at things like televisions or any kind of technology-based aspects that are free streaming, the amount of entertainment that we have available to us for $15-20 a month is ridiculous. If entertainment is a part of the American dream, that's easier to come by now. You can pick that up for less than a cup of coffee, and for the whole month in some capacities. So I do think that there is an abundance of certain things that have occurred in our lives. But if you're judging the American dream as housing, I think at the end of the day, housing is more expensive, and you have to look at a different shape on the American dream. Cars, I don't know where cars have been. They probably are kind of neutral, depending on the cars.
I mean,
I don't know.
I keep a pretty close finger on. I'm a,
You're a car guy.
automotive
I trust your judgment more than
junkie.
me,
I
yeah.
like that stuff. No, I mean they're astronomical. I mean, buying a brand new truck nowadays, you're looking at $80,000 to $100,000 for a truck. You know,
Yeah, but
if
you can get a used car for probably $12,000.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like
But back in the day, a brand
get
new
you.
car was somewhat attainable. I mean,
Yeah.
the moral of this whole podcast is that you could have a family, let's say, married couple and a couple children, and there could be one person in that household working, not a crazy job, not a CEO of a large Fortune 500 company, but just a normal job, and they can put enough money on the table to have great food, great childcare, education, 2 cars for the family, a house, and that reality is just so much different nowadays. And that's the picture I'm trying to paint here. I mean, yes.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I just don't know how real the accessibility of the American dream was in the 50s and the 60s, as opposed to the perception of how prevalent the American dream was. And I just in talking to so many people, I hear your point, and I don't disagree with it. It is clearly fundamentally challenging. A lot of people have to have dual income households. They have to sacrifice not having kids in order to build that American dream. Or if they do have kids, they're sacrificing all kinds of other issues, college education expenses. They can't cover that, or they choose to simply work into their 70s and 80s for that matter, because they just decide they're going to self-sacrifice retirement. Those sacrifices don't feel like things that my parents or grandparents had to evaluate. Though realistically, I mean, longevity was different too. People weren't living as long. So
It's true. I mean, you look at Social Security when they put Social Security into effect in the Great Depression era, they only expected people to draw on the program for a few years, and they were expecting mortality rates to be a few years afterwards after starting to draw. And the reality is people are drawing for decades now in that program, hence why they're running into so many funding issues. That's a whole nother subtopic that we can talk about at a later point. But it's funny because you're going to have a version of me as a millennial, and then you're going to have versions of this podcast coming from Tim, which is a Gen Xer. And you can even see the stark contrast here between our two
finally
opinions.
the first time they can actually tell the difference. We sound
Like this one guy sounds really pissed.
That's funny.
So this has been fun, and it's all in good faith.
Absolutely. I mean, it is what it is. It's the reality is what it is. And I do think that there are certain skills that, when you go back to that earnings potential times society's demand, even if you choose well, even if you're willing to do certain things that other people won't do. By the way, willing, in my opinion, is a combination of your work ethic, your drive, and your courage. And so, if you want to enhance your willing in order to be more successful, make more money, increase your earnings potential, work on those 3 things. But even if you have all of that, your capabilities are a function of your experience, your knowledge, and your talent. And no matter how knowledgeable or experienced or talented you may be, there are certain professions that society's demand is great for, and you just may not be physically or mentally capable of achieving that. Like, not everyone can be a brain surgeon. You can't. There's a certain threshold of minimum capabilities in terms of intelligence and everything else, not to mention all the drive and other aspects that are going to filter that. Not everybody can be a professional, basketball player. You just can't. There's some people that are going to have that opportunity, and it is what it is. But there are professions that a lot of people can do, and I guess my gut, and I can't prove this, but I suppose there's some statistics out there. I think the American dream personally is accessible to 70% of the people, as long as you define the American dream right. I think 30% are probably not going to necessarily be able to reach it. If you define the American dream higher, then maybe it's going to be more like 80% can't reach it and 20% can. But it all depends on how you define the American dream.
That is a great point and a great segue into where I wanted to go next, is that I do agree the dream is still possible. It just might not look the same to either now people, peer-to-peer, or between nowadays and previously, historically speaking. And that's what I think would be fun to talk about. The traditional model is not the only valid model. Tim, you hit on this earlier. Financial success may look more like having flexibility in life, having lower fixed costs, having freedom from bad debt, having optionality in life is so important to younger people nowadays more than ever. And just living in alignment with values opposed to appearances or keeping up with the Joneses or any of those other factors that may have been prevalent and important to living the American dream previously. So I think all of those things hold value and are important to give consideration to, because the version of the American dream for you might be drastically different from the person you're sitting next to.
Fair.
So
That's fair. Yeah. Well, I always say that at the end of the day, clearly, I for those of you who know me or get to know me, I've reached a certain level of success that a lot of people really aspire to reach, and that's a wonderful thing. But I always go back to my roots, which in my roots, 4 walls and AC, and I'm happy. Like if I have 4 walls and air conditioning, I just hate being overly hot. As food, water, shelter, like generally, some video games. I really enjoy my video games. I can live at a pretty low subsistence lifestyle, and that gives me the peace of mind and comfort to be able to be like, okay, there's a big gap between what I'm generating and what I'm comfortable with, which is a sense of peace. And so if you can increase the gap between what you're generating and what you're comfortable with, you'll have more peace. It's just the lower you get that what you're comfortable with, the easier it is to bridge that gap, regardless of where your income might be.
Yeah. Well, so a meaningful life might not require checking all those old boxes that used to be important for people to check.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Fair.
Okay.
What else you got on the outline? I know you. I want to make sure we're thorough with everybody.
Yeah, we are. We got plenty of time still left within this. Let's talk about the danger in quiet drift.
Okay.
So what do I mean by that? I think people can spend years chasing milestones, headlines that they never really sat back to examine themselves. They were just taught from a young age that this is what you do and how you do it and what you need to do, or it's what society has instilled in us, whether it was our own belief or if we just inherited it because that's what's been shoveled down our throats through entertainment and everything else for so long. So I think it's important to take a step back, examine those things to see if they are in alignment with you, because that's where quiet drift can happen without you even realizing it. With the daily bustle of life, you can just continue to do the same thing over and over thinking it's the right thing, but if you never take a step back to say, is this right for me? That's a potential quiet danger. And so those are things like buying the house, taking on debt to afford certain things, increasing and raising your standard of living, your lifestyle, to continue to keep on pushing, never feeling truly stable because you're always pushing the envelope. That's great if that's what you want. But if that's not what you want, if you just feel like you have to do that, that's where, ask the question. Ask yourself internally, is that what you're truly after?
I love that you brought that up, Tyler. I think that's an excellent example of one of the things that has transitioned over the generations. And I hate to compartmentalize and judge people. There's anomalies in every generation. It is what it is. You might identify with the baby boomers, even though you might be a Gen Z. Like, that's totally fine. Everybody's unique. But if I look at the commonalities that I've seen, I think you're more susceptible to have your head down and not self-evaluate what really matters to you if you're in the boomer generation, and then maybe a little less susceptible in the Gen Xers, and I would say even less susceptible doing that at the millennials and the Gen Ys and the Gen Zs. I feel like that's one of the great things that the millennials, the Gen Ys, and the Gen Zs have done better than the Gen Xers and the boomers is to say, wait a minute, what really matters to me? And that self-actualization that comes from really knowing what matters to you and your willingness to question that and really evaluate that and own what matters to you at a human level, I think is one of the best things that's come from the shift. Because having your head down, I hate to say this but a friend of mine, when I was 21 years old, just starting in the business, he was talking about that look that some of the retirees would have, some of the boomers that had worked at a particular company. I started in the Seattle area, and this particular visual, as graphic as it is, has stuck with me all these years. He said, that vacancy in the eyes, he said, it's like pee holes in a snowbank. It's like, I don't want to have that vacant eye look when I retire because I've just had my head down and just been grinding for 30 or 40 years. And the fact that look, I think, was on a lot of people's eyes in the boomer generation and the traditionalists before them, because that's just where they were. It's the shine in everybody's eyes and the unique individuality that I love in these newer generations that I think we're going to have less of that vacant look when the time comes and you actually transition to retire. And I think it's a good thing.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, the risk is not falling behind financially. It's the risk of waking up one day and finding a life that you never intentionally built. Having intentionality is so important.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done. I think we're all guilty of having pieces of our life that just continue because they're already in motion, So.
You know what? I'm going to give, in my first book, Passion and Ambivalence, How to Sell with Authenticity and Integrity, I have some homework at the end of that book. I'd love to give that away as a takeaway for anybody that
I think that's
listens to
great.
this episode.
Yeah.
It's something I've given a lot of clients when they transition into that, it's like 60 to 65, they're about to retire. They've gone through and done this self-assessment process. And it's available to you if you're interested in it. You can, just click the link or whatever, we'll get it to you. But the homework in the book, essentially, in a nutshell, is you take a moment to list out 100 things that you've accomplished in your lifetime. It's not a moment. It's going to take you some time. Push to 100, get it done. Then go to sleep. The next morning you wake up. Next morning when you wake up, you want to circle the top 10 that mattered the most to you. And then immediately after you circle the top 10, you list out 100 things you want to accomplish in your lifetime before you die. Then you go to sleep. The next morning you wake up, you look at your bucket list, your 100 things you want to accomplish before you die. You circle the top 10, you circle the top 1. Which one are you going to tackle first? And then go knock it down. That's how you bring intentionality to your life. It's just one way. There's lots of ways to do it. But if you don't self-assess what matters to you, what you're proud of, and you don't take the time to think about what you want to accomplish in order to make yourself feel even more proud and enjoy life, then you run that risk of having eyes like the pee holes in a snowbank, which I don't want to have happen to you.
No. I think that exercise is a truly great exercise. I appreciate that you brought that up. We will share that in the bio of the video, so that way you guys can all have an easy way to access it and go through it in your own time if it's something that you want to try to tackle. Cool. I feel good about the content. Anything else that you would like to share, Tim, on the American Dream?
Oh man, I come from a place of abundance in my mind. I just feel like there's so many things that are happening right now that have never been around before. I mean, we have medical technologies that are phenomenal. The fact that we all have the LLMs and ChatGPT equivalents and all that other stuff that can, draft all of these things. I believe that we're genuinely entering a renaissance in the next 10 to 15 years, unlike anything we've had in hundreds of years. That being said, the reality of the gap between the traditional American dream vision and the ability of the average American wage-wise to be able to afford that, it is real, and it is a bigger gap than it ever was before. So I'm excited to see how we evolve that and address that issue, and I am confident that we will find some solutions that will significantly improve that over the years ahead. I don't want to be a Pollyanna, but that's my optimism.
I think it's so important to have optimism in this day more than ever. If you feel like you're accomplishing the American dream right now and that's your vision of happiness, kudos to you. That's amazing. And if you feel like you're behind, that it is unattainable for you, I wish that this podcast gave you the answers to find that. But I think that's an internal thing that you have to battle yourself.
Do the exercise if you do the hundreds list, and then pay attention to the clear equation. Listen back to what I talked about there, the willing and the capable, and what those things are comprised of. Make sure you're choosing something that society has a high demand for and is expecting to have a high demand, even in this new future that's changing so fast. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, what will society still want? If you can provide something, service or product, that is going to meet society's demand with what you're willing to do and what you're capable of doing, you'll have enough money to support your own vision of the American dream.
Very nice. Let's come to a close on that, Tim.
Sure.
Hit them with just the answer, as always. Watch the full episode to unpack everything Tim and I talked about. But I'll hit just the answer here for all of you listeners that want the bottom line. Our topic of the day was, is the American dream still financially attainable? Tim and I came to the conclusion that yes, but it may look different than the way people were taught to expect. What do I mean by that? For a long time, the American dream has often been tied to a familiar checklist. Buying that home, raising a family, building a career, having those C-suite titles, the gold watch, the golden handcuffs at the employer, a comfortable retirement, all those things. Comfort really is, I think, a big word that comes with a lot of the American dream. Many of those goals are still meaningful, right? They still are important, but they can feel harder to reach today because the cost of ordinary life has changed so much over the years. The bigger issue is that financial possibility is no longer just about hitting old milestones. It's about building a life that is sustainable, intentional, and aligned with what actually matters to you. The dream may still be possible, but may be different for different people, and it just needs a more honest and updated definition on what the American dream actually means to you.
Yeah, no, I think it's well said, well summarized. A lot of really cool analogies and stuff, the longer version of the show. I know everybody wants to watch the Just the Answer because it's short. I respect that. I get it. We only have so many minutes. But if you haven't watched the long version of the show before, give it a shot because there's a lot of stuff we unpack together there. And I hope you're enjoying the Just the Answer. That is the bottom line. But there's a lot more fun to be had if you choose to listen to the long version of the show.
Some good stuff on the long version. Yeah. All right, Tim.
All right.
I know you're ready for some trivia.
Sure, hit me.
I think you got it right last week because I asked you about chess.
Great. So now you're going to really stump me this week. Huh?
No. I hope you get this one.
All right. We'll see.
This aligns well with the American dream.
Okay. All right.
Tim, I'd like you to tell me which country gifted the Statue of Liberty to the United States.
Dude, I would look like an idiot if I didn't know that. I'd get so beat up.
You'd get ridiculed pretty hard.
That would be horrible.
I bet there's a lot of listeners that don't know this.
Of course, it was Canada. No, I'm kidding. It was France. So France gave us the Statue of Liberty. In fact, I think they put it together over there, and then they had to disassemble it in order to send it over. So I would have loved to have seen a picture of it when it was put together over there, assuming they put it together to make sure it worked. I don't know. They definitely didn't transport it fully put together. They had to put it together where it was. But France was the country. And if I'm wrong, then shame my elementary school teacher.
You're correct. The answer is France. The Statue of Liberty is one of the most recognizable symbols tied to the American dream and the idea of opportunity.
Yeah.
So I thought that tied in nicely.
And I love that. If you reshape what it is to be to achieve the American dream for you, pick one that is attainable. It's not fun to drive for something that is unattainable. You'll be miserable. So shape the American dream to something that you feel like you can reach, and go after it. I think that's what life's about. So.
Yeah, and I know we have some listeners in other parts of the world. So for all of you listeners, find your own version of what your ideal life looks like for you. You can call it whatever you want.
Yeah, the Australian dream, the New Zealand dream,
the Down Under
Singapore dream.
Yeah.
We do. We have listeners all over the world and friends all over the world. We call it the American dream, but really, whatever that dream is for you, we would love to see you achieve it. That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Yeah. No, if you found value in the episode, please consider subscribing. We'd love to make sure that you can be notified when new episodes are released. And if you also found value, consider sharing it with a loved one, a family member, a friend, so that way they can hopefully find some good takeaways as well.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcast, check us out on YouTube. It's a fun way to watch us instead of just listening to us.
Yeah.
You can see some of our facial expressions as we say what we say, and you can subscribe to us there. So thank you so much for joining us on Clear Money Talk. Till next time.
Tim Clairmont and Tyler Andrews are investment advisor representatives offering securities through Cetera Wealth Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. The views depicted in this material are for informational purposes only and are not necessarily those of Cetera Wealth Services, LLC. They should not be considered specific advice or recommendations for any individual. For a comprehensive review of your personal situation, always consult with a tax or legal advisor. Cetera Wealth Services exclusively provides investment products and services through its representatives. Although Cetera does not provide tax or legal advice or supervise tax, accounting, or legal services, Cetera representatives may offer these services through their independent outside business. This information is not intended as tax or legal advice. All investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will be successful. Examples referenced are hypothetical only and do not represent the actual performance of any particular investments. Converting from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. A Roth IRA offers tax-free withdrawals on taxable contributions. To qualify for the tax-free and penalty-free withdrawal or earnings, a Roth IRA must be in place for at least 5 tax years, and the distribution must take place after age 59.5 or due to death, disability, or a first-time home purchase, up to a $10,000 lifetime maximum. Depending on state law, Roth IRA distributions may be subject to state taxes. Distributions from traditional IRAs and employee employer-sponsored retirement plans are taxed as ordinary income and, if taken prior to reaching age 59 and a half, may be subject to an additional 10% IRS tax penalty. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks and charges, and expenses of mutual funds and ETFs carefully before investing. The prospectus, which contains this and other information about the funds and ETFs, can be obtained directly from the company or from your financial professional. The prospectus should be read carefully before investing or sending money. A diversified portfolio does not assure a profit or protect against loss in a declining market. Dollar cost averaging will not guarantee a profit or protect you from loss, but may reduce your average cost per share in a fluctuating market. Investors cannot invest directly in indexes. The performance of any index is not indicative of the performance of any investment and does not take into account the effects of inflation and the fees and expenses associated with investing. Although it is possible to have guaranteed income for life with a fixed annuity, there is no assurance that this income will keep up with inflation. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years or during the rate guarantee period. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years that you own the contract. Withdrawals prior to age 59 and a half may result in a 10% IRS tax penalty in addition to any ordinary income tax. The guarantee of the annuity is backed by the financial strength of the underlying insurance company. Investment sub-account values will fluctuate with changes in market conditions. An investment in a variable annuity involves investment risk, including possible loss of principal. Variable annuities are designed for long-term investing. The contract, when redeemed, may be worth more or less than the total amount invested. Variable annuities are subject to insurance-related charges, including mortality and expense charges, administrative fees, and the expenses associated with the underlying sub-accounts. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks, and charges and expenses of the variable annuity carefully before investing. The prospectus contains this and other information about the variable annuity. Contact Clear Financial Partners at info@clearfp.com or 503-579-1000 to obtain a prospectus, which should be read carefully before investing or sending money. The cost and availability of life insurance depend on factors such as age, health, and the type and amount of insurance purchased. Before implementing a strategy involving life insurance, it would be prudent to make sure that you are insurable by having the policy approved. As with most financial decisions, there are expenses associated with the purchase of life insurance. Policies commonly have mortality and expense charges. In addition, if a policy is surrendered prematurely, there may be surrender charges and income tax implications. The target date of a target date fund may be a useful starting point in selecting a fund, but investors should not rely solely on the date when choosing a fund or deciding to remain invested in one. Investors should consider funds' asset allocation over the whole life of the fund. Often, target date funds invest in other mutual funds, and fees may be charged by both the target date fund and the underlying mutual funds. The principal value of these funds is not guaranteed at any time, including at the target date. Cetera does not offer any direct investments, endorsements, or advice as it relates to Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. This is for informational purposes only. Bank certificate of deposits are insured by an agency of the federal government and offer a fixed rate of return, whereas both the principal and yield of investment securities will fluctuate with changes in market conditions. Clear Financial Partners is located at 15573 Bangui Road, Suite 100, Lake Oswego, Oregon 97035. For more information, please call us at 503-579-1000.